The air was thick with the sharp tang of gunpowder, mingling with the dust that drifted across the outdoor shooting range. It was a Saturday afternoon, the busiest time of the week, and clusters of enthusiasts lined the benches, their rifles gleaming in the sunlight. The chatter was constant, men boasting about scores, others laughing at missed targets, and the constant, almost rhythmic crack of bullets hitting paper or steel. Amid the noise and movement, one woman lingered quietly, at the edge of the crowd. She was not dressed like the others, who wore tactical gear, specialized vests, or flashy shooting glasses. Instead, she wore a simple pair of jeans, a pale blouse tucked in neatly, and her hair tied back in a practical bun. She carried no branded equipment, no oversized gun case to hint at expensive firearms. In fact, she looked almost out of place, as though she had wandered in from a farmer's market rather than a firing line. The men barely noticed her. When they did, it was only to make quick judgments. Some smirked, whispering under their breath that she probably came to watch, not to shoot. Others assumed she was tagging along with her husband, though no husband appeared. She stood alone, hands folded, eyes scanning the targets with quiet precision, as though she was calculating rather than spectating. At the far end, the champion held court. He was the reigning star of the range, his name etched on plaques along the clubhouse wall. His posture radiated confidence, his rifle custom-made, polished to a mirror shine. Each time he fired, the crowd nodded, admiring his skill as he placed near-perfect shots, one after another. His reputation was untouchable, or so everyone believed. When the range officer finally noticed the woman standing in silence, he half-heartedly waved her toward an empty bench, his tone dismissive. She approached without complaint, setting down a modest, worn-out case that drew little attention. The whispers grew louder now, mocking her old equipment and quiet demeanor. Yet she remained calm, her movements deliberate, her expression unreadable, as the targets were reset and the next round prepared. The crowd turned back to their champion. The woman faded again into the background, unnoticed, unimportant. No one believed she had anything to contribute, and no one expected her to even fire a shot. But she knew something the others did not. The silence before her first shot would prove louder than all the dismissive laughter that came before it. And when the trigger finally pulled, everything at the range would change forever. The woman's fingers moved with care as she opened her old case. Inside lay a rifle that seemed plain compared to the gleaming weapons surrounding her. The wood was scratched, the metal dulled, yet it was meticulously maintained. Every screw, every spring had been cleaned and cared for. It was not flashy, but it was reliable, an instrument she knew as intimately as the rhythm of her own breathing. The men beside her scoffed. One leaned into his friend and muttered something about antique junk. Others chuckled when she didn't even put on earmuffs, opting instead for simple plugs. Yet their laughter was cut short when she stepped into her stance. Her posture was flawless, shoulders squared, feet grounded, arms steady. Not a hint of hesitation showed in her movements. The champion at the far bench continued firing, his shots ringing true. The crowd cheered as the targets revealed tight clusters. His name was shouted again and again, cementing the idea that no one could surpass him. Meanwhile, the woman loaded a single round into her rifle. Just one. She closed the chamber with quiet certainty. The range grew oddly still around her. Not because the others were watching, but because the rhythm of gunfire briefly slowed as competitors reloaded. She lifted the rifle, pressed the stock to her shoulder, and exhaled. Her eyes narrowed on the distant target, farther than most dared to attempt. The trigger clicked. The rifle cracked. The shot flew down range, slicing through the air with a sound that seemed to echo longer than any other. The crowd turned instinctively, expecting a misfire or a mistake. But when the target came back, the range fell silent. A hole sat dead center, clean, exact, and unmistakable. The paper trembled in the wind as if shocked by the force that had pierced it. The score registered higher than any seen that day, higher than the champion's, higher than the record displayed on the range wall. Gasps replaced laughter. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The champion lowered his rifle, his confident smirk faltering for the first time. All eyes that had ignored her now snapped toward the woman in disbelief. She did not smile, did not gloat. She simply reloaded, calm as ever. as though nothing remarkable had happened. Yet the weight of that single shot pressed down on everyone present. For the first time, the champion's throne felt shaky. And for the first time, the simple woman was no longer invisible. But one shot was only the beginning. The real storm had just begun. The atmosphere at the range had shifted. What was once a gathering of laughter, casual rivalry, and confident chatter now simmered with tension. The woman's single shot had rattled the foundation of the social order here, and everyone knew it. Yet pride is a powerful thing, and no champion yields his crown without a fight. The reigning marksman stepped forward, his rifle still in hand, his jaw clenched tighter than the trigger he had mastered for years. He demanded another round, eager to reclaim his dominance and prove that her bullseye was nothing more than a lucky fluke. The crowd eagerly leaned in, their loyalty split, half clinging to their idol, half curious to see if lightning could strike twice. The woman said nothing. She simply prepared another round with the same measured precision as before. Her face revealed no hint of nerves or triumph, only the quiet focus of someone who knew what she was doing and needed no validation. The targets were reset, this time placed even farther. The challenge was clear. Accuracy at distance, where every tiny miscalculation meant failure. The champion went first, his breathing measured, his movements deliberate. His shots rang out, each one striking close to center, his cluster tight and controlled. The crowd applauded, reassured by his skill. He smirked, confident again. Then the woman stepped up. Her stance was identical to before, her breathing steady, her grip unshaken. One shot fired, another bullseye. She fired again, another, and again. Each bullet carved a path into the paper target with surgical precision. By the time the round was over, her grouping was tighter than the champion's, her consistency flawless. Murmurs spread through the crowd like wildfire. Whispers turned into gasps. The champion's smirk faded completely, his shoulders stiffening under the weight of disbelief. The leaderboard was updated, and there it was, undeniable. Her score stood above his, higher than anyone else's in the history of the range. She had broken not only the champion's pride, but the record itself. Twice in a row, the whispers turned into questions. Who was she? Where did she learn to shoot like that? How long had she been hiding this skill? Yet the woman gave no answers. She simply stepped back, reloading quietly, as if none of this mattered. The champion, however, could not let it go. His pride demanded explanation, demanded confrontation. The murmurs of the crowd were no longer celebrating him, but dissecting his defeat. Every look toward him carried the unspoken truth that the throne had been stolen in plain sight. And so, a storm began to build. The woman's silence was victory enough for her, but for the champion, defeat was only fuel. The battle between pride and precision had only just begun. By the following weekend, the shooting range was buzzing louder than ever. Word had spread beyond the regulars, pulling in curious onlookers who had heard the story. They came not for the champion, but for the woman. This nobody who had shattered records and toppled egos with calm precision. Yet fame is a double-edged blade. While some admired her skill, others grew suspicious. They whispered accusations in corners, claiming she had cheated, that her rifle must have been modified, that the range officials had miscalculated the scores. For those loyal to the champion, it was easier to dismiss her achievement than to accept his downfall. The woman ignored the rumors. She returned quietly, her demeanor unchanged, her equipment the same worn rifle and case. She greeted no one, sought no attention, and simply waited for her turn. Her very lack of interest in the spectacle fueled the whispers further. Who ignores glory unless they have something to hide? The champion seized on the growing doubts. He fanned the flames, suggesting publicly that she be tested, that her rifle be inspected, that her scores be validated by officials. His pride, battered, though it was, found solace in suspicion. If he could not outshoot her, perhaps he could undermine her. The officials, pressured by the crowd, agreed. Her rifle was examined piece by piece. The wood, though worn, showed no hidden devices. The barrel, though polished, bore no signs of tampering. The optics were simple, unmodified. Everything about the weapon screamed ordinary. When the test came, the woman did not protest. She stepped up again, her equipment freshly cleared, her stance as calm as ever. Once more, her shots pierced the center of the target with surgical perfection. The results were undeniable. No trick, no modification, no fraud. The whispers faltered, collapsing under the weight of proof. But pride has a way of clinging stubbornly, and the champion's humiliation only deepened. Each time she fired, she erased excuses and left him exposed. The audience now looked to her not as an anomaly, but as the new measure of greatness. And still, she remained silent. Her skill spoke louder than any words, louder than the rumors, louder than the champion's protests. But silence, as powerful as it was, could not shield her from the storm of envy and pride about to crash full force. The weeks that followed turned the shooting range into a stage, and every performance drew larger crowds. The woman's presence transformed ordinary weekends into events. Cars filled the gravel lot early in the morning, people jostled for space along the sidelines, and even local reporters began to appear, cameras in hand, ready to capture the spectacle of a nobody outshooting the champion. Yet with each gathering, the tension tightened like a bowstring. The champion's pride, already battered, now hung by a thread. Where once his name had been spoken with admiration, now it was paired with hers in comparison. He was no longer the sole standard of greatness. He was merely the man who lost to the woman with the old rifle. He tried harder. He trained longer. He upgraded his rifle, adjusted his stance, practiced tirelessly. But each time he faced her, the result was the same. She stood calm, unshaken, and her bullets carved holes in the target that seemed drawn by an invisible hand. He, in turn, grew more desperate, his shots slightly off, his frustration visible. The crowd noticed. Whispers began to paint him not as a hero, but as a sore loser chasing shadows. His temper flared at officials, at fellow shooters, even at spectators, who dared to question him. What had once been respect curdled into pity, and pity into ridicule. For a man built on reputation, ridicule was poison. The breaking point came on a blustery afternoon. The challenge had been set once again, this time at extreme range, the kind where even seasoned marksmen hesitated. The champion went first, his rifle braced, his breathing forced steady. His shots struck near the mark but strayed just wide enough to draw murmurs of disappointment. Then came the woman. She loaded her rifle with the same calm precision as always. The wind whipped at her hair, dust stung her eyes, yet her stance did not falter. One by one, her shots tore into the target, each closer, each cleaner, each a defiance of the elements. By the final round, her grouping was perfect, tighter than even the officials believed possible under those conditions. The crowd erupted, but not with the champion's name. They cheered for her, for the simple woman who had now established herself as more than a record breaker. She was a phenomenon. The champion's face hardened, his pride shattered beyond repair. In that moment, he was no longer fighting her skill. He was fighting his own humiliation. He slammed his rifle down, stormed off the line, and declared the entire competition unfair. His voice cracked with rage, but no one listened. The cheers drowned him out. The woman, meanwhile, said nothing. She lowered her rifle, packed it away, and walked calmly to the edge of the crowd. Her quiet exit only made her legend grow. But storms never end so easily. The champion's rage had not vanished. It had only shifted, searching for a way to strike back. And soon, his bitterness would turn into a plan that threatened to undo everything she had earned. The champion's downfall was no longer private. It was public, undeniable, and humiliating. Every whisper of his name carried the weight of defeat, while hers carried the spark of admiration. Yet envy is a dangerous seed, and the champion, unable to bear his ruined reputation, plotted a final attempt to reclaim it. He demanded an ultimate test. Not a casual round, not a weekly match, but a sanctioned competition with officials, judges, and media coverage. His claim was simple. If she truly was as skilled as she appeared, let her prove it under the brightest spotlight. He framed it as fairness, but beneath the surface it was desperation. He hoped the pressure, the cameras, the crowd would break her composure. The woman did not argue. She accepted without hesitation. Not for glory, not for revenge. but simply because shooting was what she knew. To her, the crowd's noise mattered no more than the wind across the range. The day of the event arrived, and the stands overflowed. Reporters lined the edges, photographers ready to immortalize every moment. Officials set the targets at distances that tested even the most seasoned professionals. The champion arrived in full gear, his equipment shining, his appearance polished to perfection. He carried himself with the air of a man who believed destiny could still be rewritten. She arrived in the same jeans, the same simple blouse, carrying the same battered case. Nothing about her had changed. The contrast between them was stark, and the crowd buzzed with anticipation. The competition began. Shot after shot, the champion performed well, his skill undeniable. His grouping was tight, his focus unyielding. The crowd applauded politely, giving him the respect of a craftsman at work. Then it was her turn. She stepped forward, calm as a quiet river. Her rifle rose to her shoulder, her breathing slowed, and the world seemed to still around her. Each shot rang out, each strike landed true. Her grouping was flawless, her precision unmatched. When the final target was reeled in, the numbers were clear. She had not only beaten him again, she had set a record that eclipsed anything in the range's history. The crowd erupted. Reporters rushed forward. Cameras flashed, capturing the image of a woman who had arrived unknown and left undeniable. The champion, standing off to the side, could only watch as the applause thundered for her alone. His crown was gone, his throne dismantled, his name reduced to a footnote in her story. Yet she did not bask in the glory. She packed her rifle, gave a quiet nod to the officials, and walked away. No speeches, no victory lap, no arrogance. Just silence, steady and unshaken. And that silence became her legend. The story spread beyond the range, beyond the town, beyond the community. She became a symbol, not just of skill, but of humility, of patience, of the quiet power that waits beneath the surface until the moment is right. The champion, once adored, faded into obscurity. The woman, once ignored, became immortal in the memory of all who had seen her. A simple woman with an old rifle had broken the champion's record, and, in doing so, she had rewritten history itself.